Queen Vera stood at the tall window of her royal chamber and looked out at the city below. The lights of the Norian capital stretched for miles in every direction. Towers of crystal and metal reached toward the purple sky. Ships floated silently between buildings. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And Vera hated every inch of it. She had lived in this palace for 300 years. 300 years of smiling at people she did not like. 300 years of attending ceremonies that meant nothing. 300 years of sleeping beside a man she did not love. Her reflection stared back at her from the window. Silver skin that glowed softly in the dim light. Dark eyes that held no happiness. Long white hair that fell past her shoulders like water. She was considered the most beautiful queen in Norian history. Painters had created thousands of portraits of her face. Poets had written songs about her grace. None of it mattered. Vera turned away from the window and walked across her chamber. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold marble floor. She stopped in front of a large mirror and studied herself. She looked exactly the same as she had 3 centuries ago. Norians aged slowly. They could live for 1,000 years or more. But time still moved forward, even for them. Tonight was the Emperor's Gala, the biggest celebration of the year. Every noble family in the empire would attend. There would be music and dancing and endless conversation about nothing important. Vera was expected to stand beside her husband and smile. She was expected to pretend that everything was fine. But everything was not fine. The door to her chamber opened and King Thalon walked in. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that had begun to fade to gray. His eyes were cold, and deep lines marked his face. He was old. Not old by human standards, but old by Norian standards. His body was failing him, and everyone knew it. "You are not dressed," Thalon said. His voice was sharp. "The gala begins in 1 hour." Vera did not look at him. "I am aware. Then why are you standing there like a fool? Put on your gown. Fix your hair. We must present a united front tonight." A united front. Vera almost laughed. There was nothing united about them. There never had been. Their marriage had been arranged by their families 400 years ago. 2 powerful houses joined together to prevent a war. Love had never been part of the agreement. "I spoke with the physicians today," Vera said quietly. Thalon's expression did not change. "And they confirmed what we already knew. Your genetic markers have degraded beyond repair. You cannot produce an heir. You never will." The words hung in the air between them. Vera watched her husband's face. She saw anger flash in his eyes, but he controlled it quickly. Thalon was always in control. "This changes nothing," he said. "It changes everything." Vera finally turned to face him. "I have spent 3 centuries trying to give you a child. 3 centuries of treatments and procedures and disappointments. And now we know the truth. The failure was never mine. It was yours." Thalon stepped closer to her. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You will never speak those words again. Do you understand me? If anyone learns that the king is infertile, our house will fall. Our enemies will circle like predators. Everything we have built will crumble." "Everything you have built," Vera corrected him. "I built nothing. I was just the decoration you placed beside your throne. You are my queen. I am your prisoner." Thalon grabbed her arm. His grip was tight, almost painful. "You will attend the gala tonight. You will smile and wave and play your part. And tomorrow we will announce that we are trying a new treatment. We will give the people hope. False hope. Hope is hope. It does not matter if it is real." Thalon released her arm and stepped back. "Now get dressed. I will not ask again." He turned and walked out of the chamber. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Vera stood alone in the silence. She looked down at her arm where his fingers had pressed into her skin. There would be bruises tomorrow. There were always bruises. She walked to her closet and opened the doors. Dozens of gowns hung inside, each one more expensive than the last. Gold and silver and precious gems. Enough wealth to feed a planet for a year. She reached out and touched the fabric of the nearest gown. It was soft and cold. Vera made her decision in that moment. She was not sure when the thought had first entered her mind. Perhaps it had always been there, waiting for the right time. But now it was clear. Now it was certain. She would not attend the gala tonight. She would not smile and wave and pretend. She would not spend another 300 years trapped in this golden cage. She was going to run. Vera moved quickly. She pulled a simple traveling cloak from the back of her closet. It was plain gray fabric, nothing that would attract attention. She gathered a small bag and filled it with basic supplies. Water, food packets, a medical kit. She did not take jewelry or money or anything that could identify her as royalty. The palace had many secret passages. Vera had discovered them over the centuries, exploring the ancient building during the long nights when she could not sleep. She knew a route that would take her to the lower levels, to the maintenance docks where supply ships came and went. She wrapped a cloak around her shoulders and pulled a hood over her white hair. She took one last look around her chamber. 300 years of her life were contained in this room. 300 years of loneliness and disappointment and quiet desperation. She felt nothing as she turned away. The passage was dark and narrow. Vera moved through it quickly, her heart beating fast in her chest. She expected alarms to sound at any moment. She expected guards to appear and drag her back to her husband. But the palace was quiet. Everyone was preparing for the gala. No one was watching the forgotten corners of the building. She reached the maintenance dock without incident. A small transport ship sat in the corner, loaded with supplies for delivery to outer colonies. The pilot was nowhere in sight. Vera climbed aboard and found the cockpit. The controls were simple enough. She had never flown a ship before, but she had watched others do it many times. The engine hummed to life. Vera guided the ship out of the dock and into the night sky. She did not look back at the palace. She did not look back at the city. She pointed the ship toward the stars and flew. She had no plan. She had no destination. She only knew that she wanted to go somewhere far away. Somewhere no one would recognize her. Somewhere she could be something other than a failed queen. She found a star chart in the ship's computer and searched for the most distant colonies. One name caught her attention. New Montana. A human settlement on the edge of known space. It was primitive and isolated and completely beneath the notice of Norian. Nobility. It was perfect. Vera set the coordinates and leaned back in her seat. The stars stretched and blurred as the ship jumped to faster than light speed. She was alone in the darkness between worlds. She was free. For the first time in 300 years, Queen Vera smiled. Daniel Cole woke up the same way he did every morning. The sun was just starting to rise over the eastern hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. His dogs, Biscuit and Gravy, were already awake and waiting by the bedroom door. They wagged their tails when he sat up in bed. All right, Daniel said with a tired smile. I'm coming. He was 34 years old, with brown hair that was always a little messy and brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. His hands were rough from years of hard work. His shoulders were broad from lifting and carrying. He was not a handsome man by most standards, but there was something warm and honest about his face. Daniel had come to New Montana 5 years ago. Earth had become too crowded, too loud, too complicated. He had wanted something simple. A piece of land. A house he built with his own hands. Crops that grew because he planted them and tended them. He had found all of that here, on the edge of human space. He pulled on his work clothes and walked downstairs. The farmhouse was small but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room with a fireplace. He had built most of the furniture himself. It was not fancy, but it was as Daniel made coffee and stood by the window while he drank it. His wheat fields stretched out before him, golden and ready for harvest. Beyond the fields, he could see the distant mountains. The sky was clear and blue. It was going to be a good day. He finished his coffee and headed outside. Biscuit and Gravy ran ahead of him, barking at birds and chasing each other through the tall grass. Daniel smiled as he watched them. They were good dogs, loyal and friendly and always happy to see him. The morning passed quickly. Daniel checked his equipment, inspected his crops, and made repairs to a fence that had been damaged by wind. He was just finishing his lunch when he heard the sound. It was a low rumble at first, like distant thunder. But the sky was clear. There were no storms coming. Daniel looked up and saw something falling from the sky. It was a ship, small and fast and completely out of control. Fire trailed behind it as it dropped toward the ground. Daniel ran. He did not think about danger. He did not think about what might be inside the ship. He only knew that someone might need help. The ship crashed in his wheat field. It carved a long path through the crops, throwing dirt and plants into the air. When it finally stopped, it was half buried in the ground. Smoke rose from the damaged hull. Daniel reached the crash site and circled the ship carefully. It was unlike any human vessel he had seen. The design was smooth and elegant, with curves instead of angles. The metal was a strange silver color that seemed to glow faintly even in the daylight. He found the door on the side of the ship. It had been torn open by the impact. Daniel climbed inside and looked around. The cockpit was small and filled with smoke. Emergency lights blinked red in the darkness. And there, slumped in the pilot's seat, was a woman. She was not human. Daniel could see that immediately. Her skin was silver, like the metal of the ship. Her hair was white and tangled. She was wearing a simple gray cloak that was now stained with blood. Her eyes were closed, and she was not moving. Daniel checked for a pulse. He did not know if aliens had pulses in the same way humans did, but he had to try. He pressed his fingers against her neck and felt a faint beating. She was alive. He lifted her carefully and carried her out of the ship. She was lighter than he expected. He carried her across the field to his farmhouse and laid her on the couch in his living room. Biscuit and Gravy circled nervously, sniffing the air. Daniel examined her injuries. She had a cut on her head that was bleeding badly. Her arm was bent at a strange angle, probably broken. There were burns on her hands, maybe from the ship's controls. He was not a doctor, but he knew basic first aid. He cleaned the cut and bandaged it. He made a splint for her arm. He treated the burns with ointment from his medical kit. Then he sat down in a chair across from her and waited. She woke up 3 hours later. Her eyes opened slowly, and she looked around the room with confusion. When she saw Daniel, she tried to sit up quickly and cried out in pain. "Easy," Daniel said. He held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're hurt. Don't move too fast." The woman stared at him. Her dark eyes were wide with fear and suspicion. "Where am I?" "My farm, New Montana. You crashed in my wheat field." Daniel spoke slowly and clearly. "My name is Daniel. I found you in your ship and brought you here." She looked down at her bandaged arm, at the blanket he had placed over her. "You helped me." "Of course I did." "Why?" Daniel was confused by the question. "Because you needed help. That's what people do." The woman continued to stare at him. She seemed to be waiting for something, some kind of trick or trap. But Daniel just sat quietly in his chair. He did not move toward her. He did not ask questions. He simply waited. I am. She paused, as if deciding something. My name is Vera. Nice to meet you, Vera. Are you hungry? I was about to make dinner. Again, she looked confused. You are offering me food? Well, yeah. You've been unconscious for hours. You must be hungry. Daniel stood up and walked toward the kitchen. I'm not a great cook, but I can make a decent stew. You like vegetables? Vera did not answer. She watched him move around the kitchen, gathering ingredients and filling a pot with water. Biscuit wandered over to the couch and sniffed her hand. Vera flinched at first, then slowly relaxed as the dog wagged its tail. That's Biscuit, Daniel said from the kitchen. The other one is Gravy. They're friendly. Mostly useless for guarding, but good company. The evening passed quietly. Daniel made stew and brought a bowl to Vera. She ate slowly, carefully, as if she expected the food to be poisoned. When nothing bad happened, she finished the entire bowl. Daniel did not ask about her ship. He did not ask why she had crashed. He did not ask where she came from or where she was going. He just made small talk about the weather and the farm and his dogs. Normal things. Simple things. When it got dark, he showed her to the guest room. It was small and plain, with just a bed and a dresser and a window that looked out at the stars. You can stay here until you're healed, Daniel said. No rush. Take all the time you need. Vera stood in the doorway of the room. She looked at the bed, at the clean sheets, at the pillow. Then she looked at Daniel. I do not understand you, she said. What's there to understand? You helped me. You fed me. You are giving me a place to sleep. And you ask nothing in return. Daniel shrugged. What would I ask for? Vera did not have an answer for that. In her world, everything had a price. Every kindness came with expectations. Every gift required payment. But this human seemed to want nothing from her. He was simply being kind because that was who he was. Thank you, she said quietly. The words felt strange in her mouth. She could not remember the last time she had said them and meant them. Daniel smiled. It was a warm smile, genuine and open. Get some sleep. Tomorrow I'll make pancakes. He closed the door gently and walked away. Vera stood alone in the small room. She listened to his footsteps moving down the hall. She heard him talking to his dogs in a soft voice. She heard the creak of the old farmhouse settling in the night. She walked to the window and looked out at the sky. The stars were different here. Brighter somehow. More beautiful. She could not see the Norian homeworld from here. She could not see the palace or the city or anything from her old life. She was alone on a strange planet. In a strange house, with a strange man who had saved her life for no reason at all. And for the first time in centuries. Vera did not feel afraid. She climbed into the bed and pulled the blanket up to her chin. The mattress was soft. The pillow smelled like clean cotton. Outside the window, she could hear insects singing in the night. Vera closed her eyes and slept deeply, without dreams. The weeks passed slowly on the farm. Vera's injuries healed bit by bit. Her arm grew stronger. The cut on her head faded to a thin scar that was barely visible beneath her white hair. She began to feel like herself again, though she was not sure who that person was anymore. Daniel never asked her to leave. He never asked her to pay rent or work for her food. He simply went about his days, tending to his crops and his animals, and let her be. But Vera found that she did not want to just sit in the house. She wanted to do something. She wanted to be useful. Teach me, she said one morning over breakfast. Daniel looked up from his eggs. Teach you what? How to farm. How to grow things. I want to help. He smiled at her. That warm, easy smile that she had come to look forward to each day. All right. But I should warn you, it's hard work. I am not afraid of hard work. That was a lie. Vera had never done hard work in her entire life. She had been raised in a palace, surrounded by servants who did everything for her. She had never cooked a meal or cleaned a room or planted a seed. But she was determined to learn. The first day was difficult. Daniel showed her how to pull weeds from between the rows of wheat. It seemed simple enough, but the sun was hot, and the work was boring, and her back began to hurt after just an hour. Her hands, which had always been soft and smooth, quickly became red and sore by the end of the day. Vera was exhausted. She had blisters on her palms and dirt under her fingernails. Her entire body ached. She sat on the porch steps and stared at her ruined hands. Daniel sat down beside her and handed her a glass of cold water. "Not bad for your first day." Vera laughed bitterly. "I was terrible." "You were learning. There's a difference." He took her hand gently and examined the blisters. "We'll wrap these up tonight. They'll heal, and your skin will get tougher. In a few weeks, you won't even notice the work." He was right. The days continued, and slowly, Vera grew stronger. Her hands developed calluses. Her muscles stopped aching so much. She learned to tell the difference between weeds and crops. She learned how to check the soil for moisture and how to spot insects that might damage the plants. She also learned about Daniel. He talked while they worked. Small things at first. Stories about his childhood on Earth. Memories of his parents and his brother. He told her about the crowded cities and the polluted skies and how he had always dreamed of open spaces. "That's why I came here," he said one afternoon as they walked between the rows of wheat. "I wanted to build something. Something real. Something that would last." Vera understood that desire more than she could say. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel told her about Maria. "She was my wife," he said quietly. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, on the fading orange light. "We met on the transport ship coming to New Montana. She was a biologist, studying alien plants. She had the most amazing laugh." Vera listened in silence. She could hear the pain in his voice, old but still present. "We were married for 2 years. We were going to start a family. We talked about it all the time. Names for our children. How many bedrooms we would need to add to the house." He paused and took a deep breath. "She died in a transport accident. A malfunction in the engine. Everyone on board was lost." "I am sorry," Vera said. The words felt small and useless, but she did not know what else to say. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned and looked at her. "That was 4 years ago. It still hurts. I don't think it ever stops hurting. But you learn to carry it. You learn to keep going." He reached out and took her hand. It was a simple gesture, but it made Vera's heart beat faster. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you're carrying something too. I can see it in your eyes. And I want you to know that you don't have to carry it alone." Vera felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not cried in decades. Noreen queens did not cry. But here, on this small farm, under this unfamiliar sky, she felt the walls around her heart beginning to crack. "I was a queen," she said. The words came out before she could stop them. "I was married to a king for 300 years. Our marriage was arranged, political. I never loved him, and he never loved me." Daniel listened without interrupting. His hand remained warm around hers. "We tried for centuries to have a child. In our society, children are everything. A family without children is considered a failure. I believed for so long that the fault was mine, that there was something wrong with me." She took a shaking breath. "But it was him. His body could not produce an heir. And when I found out, he refused to release me. He would rather keep me trapped than admit his own weakness. So you ran. I ran." Vera looked at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. "I left everything behind. my title, my home, my entire world. And I ended up here, crashing into your wheat field. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. I'm glad you did. She looked at him with surprise. You are glad? This farm has been pretty lonely since Maria died. Having you here, it's been nice. You make me laugh. You ask funny questions about human things. You're terrible at pulling weeds. Vera felt a smile tugging at her lips despite the tears on her cheeks. I am getting better. You are. Daniel's eyes were warm as he looked at her. Where I come from, a person's worth isn't measured by what their body can or can't do. It's measured by their heart. And from what I can see, you have a good heart, Vera. No one had ever said anything like that to her. In 3 centuries of life, no one had ever looked past her title and her appearance and seen her. Really seen her. But this simple farmer, this human who lived such a short life, had seen her in just a few weeks. I do not understand humans, Vera said. What's to understand? You live such short lives. 80 years, maybe 100 if you are lucky. That is nothing to my people. We would consider that barely childhood. Yet you love so deeply. You care so much. You lose everything, and you still keep hoping. Daniel thought about that for a moment. Maybe that's because of how short our lives are. We don't have time to waste on fear and regret. We have to love while we can. We have to build while we can. Every day matters. He stood up and offered her his hand. Come on. I want to show you something. He led her down a path behind the farmhouse, through a small grove of trees. On the other side was a pond. The water was still and clear, reflecting the stars above. Fireflies danced at the edges, their lights blinking like tiny stars. I found this place when I first bought the land, Daniel said. Maria and I used to come here at night. We would sit on that rock over there and talk about the future. He walked to the rock and sat down. Vera sat beside him. The night was warm, and the air smelled like flowers and grass. It was peaceful in a way that Vera had never experienced. After she died, I stopped coming here, Daniel continued. It hurt too much, but tonight felt right. Vera leaned against his shoulder. She did not ask permission. It simply felt natural, like it was what she was supposed to do. Daniel put his arm around her. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. I guess we figure it out together. Together. Vera repeated the word in her mind. It was such a small word, but it held so much meaning. She had never had a partner before. She had had a husband, but that was different. That was duty and obligation. This was something else entirely. I would like that, she said. Daniel kissed the top of her head softly. Good. They sat by the pond until the moon rose high in the sky. They did not need to speak. They just sat together, 2 people from different worlds, finding comfort in each other's presence. When they finally walked back to the farmhouse, Daniel took her hand again. This time, Vera did not feel confused or suspicious. She just felt happy. The future was uncertain. Her past was still chasing her. But in that moment, none of it mattered. She was exactly where she wanted to be. King Fallon stood in his war room and stared at the holographic map floating before him. The image showed a small planet on the edge of known space. New Montana. A human colony. A speck of dust in the vast empire he controlled. And yet this tiny world had become the source of his greatest humiliation. His queen had run away. His wife of 3 centuries had abandoned him. And now, after months of searching, his spies had finally found her. She was living on a farm. A farm, like some common peasant. Like some primitive human with no understanding of civilization or culture. The thought made Fallon's blood boil with rage. Commander Lysa, he said without turning around. A tall woman stepped forward from the shadows. She was dressed in the silver armor of the royal guard, and her face was hard and cold. "Yes, my king. You will take the Nightfall to this colony. You will retrieve my queen and bring her back to me." Lysa hesitated. "And if she refuses to come? Then you will bring her by force." Thallon finally turned to face his commander. His eyes were dark with anger. "She is my property. She does not have the right to refuse. What about the humans? If they interfere, then you will eliminate them. They are insects. Their lives mean nothing." Thallon walked closer to Lysa. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "But listen to me carefully. I want Vera alive and unharmed. If even a single hair on her head is damaged, I will hold you personally responsible. Do you understand?" Lysa nodded stiffly. "Yes, my king. Go." The warship Nightfall departed from the Norian homeworld that same day. It was one of the fastest and most powerful ships in the Royal Fleet. Its weapons could destroy entire cities. Its shields could withstand almost any attack. Against a primitive human colony, it would be like a giant stepping on ants. Lysa stood on the bridge and watched the stars blur past. She had served the king for 200 years. She had carried out many difficult orders. She had destroyed enemies and conquered worlds. But something about this mission bothered her. She had met Queen Vera once, long ago. The queen had been kind to her. She had remembered Lysa's name and asked about her family. It was a small thing, but Lysa had never forgotten it. In a court full of cruelty and politics, kindness was rare. But orders were orders. Lysa would do her duty. The Nightfall arrived at New Montana 3 days later. The planet hung in space like a blue and green jewel, beautiful and unsuspecting. Lysa scanned the surface and located the small settlement called Hope's Landing. And there, a few miles outside the town, she found a farm that matched the description from the intelligence reports. "Take us down," she ordered. The warship descended through the clouds. It cast a dark shadow over the golden wheat fields below. People in the town looked up and pointed. They had never seen a ship like this. They did not know what it meant. Daniel was in the kitchen when he heard the noise. It was a low rumbling sound, like thunder but deeper. He walked to the window and looked outside. His heart stopped. A massive ship was hovering over his field. It was black and silver, covered in weapons and armor. It was clearly military. It was clearly alien. And it was clearly here for Vera. "Vera," he called out. "Vera, come here, now." She came running from the garden, dirt on her hands and worry on her face. When she saw the ship through the window, all the color drained from her silver skin. "No," she whispered. No. "He found me." "Who found you?" "Thallon, my husband. He sent them." Vera grabbed Daniel's arm. Her hands were shaking. "You have to hide. You have to run. They will kill you if you get in their way." "I'm not running anywhere." "Daniel, you do not understand. That is a Norian warship. They have weapons that can destroy this entire town in seconds. You cannot fight them." "Maybe not." Daniel took her face in his hands and looked into her eyes. "But I'm not going to let them take you. Not without a fight." The ship landed in the field. A ramp lowered from its belly, and soldiers began marching out. They were tall and silver-skinned, dressed in black armor and carrying weapons that glowed with deadly light. Commander Lysa walked at the front of the formation. Daniel stepped out onto his porch. Biscuit and Gravy stood beside him, growling at the approaching soldiers. He did not have a weapon. He did not have armor. He was just a farmer in work clothes, standing alone against an army. "Daniel Cole?" Lysa called out as she approached. "I am Commander Lysa of the Norian Royal Guard. I am here for Queen Vera. Surrender her to us, and you will not be harmed. She doesn't want to go with you. What she wants is not relevant. She belongs to King Thallon. She's his wife and his property. People aren't property. Daniel's voice was steady, even though his heart was pounding. She's not going anywhere. Lysa raised her hand. The soldiers behind her lifted their weapons. I do not wish to harm you, human, but I have my orders. Stand aside, or you will be eliminated. No. For a moment, Lysa seemed surprised by his refusal. She was not used to defiance. In the Norian Empire, when a commander gave an order, people obeyed. But this human just stood there, looking at her with calm determination. You would die for her? Lysa asked. Yes. Before Lysa could respond, the sound of engines filled the air. Daniel looked up and saw vehicles approaching from the direction of town. Trucks and tractors and hovercars, all heading toward the farm. People were climbing out, gathering at the edge of Daniel's property. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Mayor Rebecca Stone stepped forward from the crowd. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been one of the first settlers on New Montana, and she had helped build Hope's Landing from nothing. What's going on here? She demanded. Lysa turned to face her. This does not concern you, human. Return to your homes. This concerns all of us. Vera is part of our community now. Whatever problem you have with her, you have with all of us. More people stepped forward. Farmers carrying tools and hunting rifles. Miners with pickaxes and shovels. Shopkeepers and teachers and children. They spread out around Daniel's farm, forming a protective barrier. This is madness, Lysa said. You cannot stop us. We have weapons that could level your entire town. Then do it, Mayor Stone said. Her voice did not waver. Kill us all. Murder hundreds of innocent people because one woman doesn't want to be with a man who mistreated her. Show the entire galaxy what Norian honor looks like. Lysa hesitated. This was not part of her orders. She had been told to retrieve the queen and eliminate any resistance. But these humans were not resisting with weapons. They were resisting by simply standing there, refusing to move. Vera stepped out of the farmhouse and walked toward Lysa. Daniel tried to stop her, but she shook her head. Commander Lysa, she said, I remember you. You were kind to me once when others were not. Lysa's expression flickered with surprise. You remember that? I remember everything. Vera stood tall before the commander. These people have done nothing wrong. They took me in when I had nothing. They treated me with respect and kindness. If you want to take me back to Thallon, I will go. But only if you promise to leave them unharmed. No. Daniel grabbed her arm. You can't go back to him. I won't let you. Daniel, I cannot let these people die because of me. And I can't let you throw your life away because of fear. He turned her to face him. You told me that humans love fiercely because we don't have much time. Well, this is me loving fiercely. I'm not giving up on you. Not now. Not ever. Vera stared at him. Tears were forming in her eyes. You foolish human. Yeah, well, that's me. Commander Lysa watched the scene before her. She saw the tears in Vera's eyes. She saw the determination in Daniel's face. She saw the hundreds of humans who had come to protect someone they barely knew, simply because it was the right thing to do. And in that moment, something inside Lysa shifted. She thought about her orders. She thought about King Thallon, sitting in his palace, demanding that his property be returned. She thought about the 300 years Vera had spent trapped in a loveless marriage, blamed for a problem that was never her fault. Lysa lowered her hand. The soldiers behind her looked confused. Commander? One of them asked. Stand down, Lysa said quietly. But our orders, I said, stand down. Her voice was sharp and final. She turned to Vera. I will report that you were not found here. I will tell the king that his spies were mistaken. Vera's eyes went wide. You would do that? But he will punish you, perhaps. Lysa smiled slightly. It was a sad smile. But some things are worth the punishment. She turned and walked back toward her ship. The soldiers followed, confused but obedient. The ramp closed behind them, and the engines roared to life. As the nightfall rose into the sky and disappeared among the stars, the people of Hope's Landing erupted in cheers. They surrounded Daniel and Vera, clapping them on the back and hugging them. Mayor Stone walked up to Vera and took her hand. "Welcome to New Montana, officially. You're one of us now." Vera looked at the faces around her. These strange, wonderful humans who had risked everything for her. She looked at Daniel, who was smiling through his own tears. "Thank you," she said. "All of you." Daniel pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "I told you," he said. "You don't have to carry anything alone." For the first time in her long life, Vera truly believed him. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A small human colony had stood against a Norian warship. They had refused to surrender one of their own. And somehow, impossibly, they had won. The story was told on news channels and in taverns, in Senate chambers, and in homes. People talked about the farmer who loved a queen. They talked about the mayor who faced down soldiers. They talked about the hundreds of ordinary people who gathered with nothing but tractors and tools and refused to be afraid. The Galactic Council could not ignore what had happened. Reports flooded in from across known space. Questions were asked. Investigations were launched. Within days, representatives from 12 different species arrived at New Montana to learn the truth. King Thalon tried to stop them. He claimed that Vera was his wife and his property under Norian law. He demanded that she be returned. But the council was not interested in Norian law. They were interested in justice. The hearings lasted for 3 weeks. Vera told her story to the council members. She spoke of 3 centuries of unhappiness. She spoke of the treatments and procedures she had endured, trying to have a child. She spoke of the moment she learned that the problem had never been hers. Daniel sat beside her the entire time. He held her hand when she cried. He supported her when her voice shook. He was there, steady and strong, exactly as he had promised to be done. In the end, the council ruled in Vera's favor. They declared that her marriage to Thalon was dissolved under galactic law. They declared that she was a free woman, entitled to live wherever she chose. And they sent a message to King Thalon. His actions had been seen by the entire galaxy, and he would not be allowed to harm anyone on New Montana. The king's reputation never recovered. A ruler who sent warships after farmers. A husband who called his wife his property. These were not the qualities the Norian people respected. Within a year, his political rivals had gathered enough support to challenge his authority. His house fell. His power vanished. History would remember him as a cautionary tale about pride and cruelty. Vera did not think about Thalon after that. She had wasted 3 centuries of her life on him. She refused to waste another moment. She stayed on New Montana. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because it was exactly where she wanted to be. She worked beside Daniel on the farm. She learned to plant seeds and harvest crops. She became friends with the people of Hope's Landing, who treated her like one of their own. 6 months after the council's ruling, Daniel asked Vera to marry him. He did it simply, without ceremony or speeches. They were sitting on their rock by the pond, watching the fireflies dance, and he just asked, "Vera, will you be my wife?" Not because of politics or alliances or anything like that. Just because I love you, and I want to spend whatever time I have left with you. Vera smiled at him. Her eyes were bright with happiness. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married in the spring. The whole town came to celebrate. Mayor Stone performed the ceremony. Biscuit and gravy served as ring bearers, much to everyone's amusement. It was simple and beautiful and full of laughter. That night, as they lay together in their farmhouse, Vera told Daniel something she had been afraid to say. "I want a family," she whispered. "I want children. But I do not know if it is possible. Our species are so different." Daniel held her close. "Then we'll find out together. And if it doesn't work, that's okay too. We have each other. We have the farm. We have a good life. You would be content with that? Even if we never have children, I would be content with you. Everything else is just extra." They did not know what would happen. Norian and human genetics had never been combined. Scientists said it was probably impossible. The biology was too different, the DNA too incompatible. But life has a way of surprising people. 18 months after their wedding, Vera discovered she was pregnant. The doctors were amazed. They ran test after test, trying to understand how it had happened. The babies growing inside her were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were neither Norian nor human, but something in between. The pregnancy was difficult. Vera's body had to adapt to carrying children that were partly alien to her own species. There were complications and scary moments. Daniel never left her side. He read to her when she could not sleep. He held her hand through every doctor's visit. He told her stories about the family they were building. On a warm summer evening, as the sun set over the golden wheat fields, Vera gave birth to twins. The boy came first. He had his father's brown eyes and his mother's silver hair. They named him Thomas, after Daniel's grandfather. He cried loudly the moment he entered the world, healthy and strong. The girl came second. She had her mother's dark eyes and skin that was a soft blend of silver and tan. They named her Luna, for the moon that had shone over the pond on the night Daniel first told Vera about his past. She was quiet and calm, watching the world with curious eyes. Daniel held his daughter for the first time. His hands, rough from years of farming, cradled her tiny body with incredible gentleness. Tears streamed down his weathered face. He could not speak. He could not find the words for what he felt. Vera lay in the bed, exhausted but happy. She watched her husband hold their child, and she felt her heart overflow with love. This was everything she had ever wanted. This was the family she had dreamed of for 3 centuries. "Let me see her," she said softly. Daniel brought Luna to her. Vera took the baby in her arms and looked into her daughter's face. Those dark eyes looked back at her, and Vera saw the future. She saw years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and birthday parties. She saw a little girl growing up on a farm, surrounded by love. Thomas began crying again, and Daniel laughed as he picked up his son. "This one has your stubbornness. He has your appetite," Vera replied, smiling. They sat together in the quiet room, holding their children. Outside the window, the stars were appearing in the evening sky. Somewhere out there was the Norian homeworld, the palace Vera had fled, the life she had left behind. But it felt like a distant dream now, a story that had happened to someone else. "You gave me everything I dreamed of," Vera whispered. Daniel looked at her. His eyes were still wet with tears, but he was smiling. "No, we built it together." In the weeks that followed, the news of the twins spread across the galaxy. Scientists came to study them, fascinated by this first successful blending of Norian and human DNA. Journalists came to tell their story. Diplomats came to discuss what this meant for relations between the two species. But Daniel and Vera did not care about any of that. They were too busy being parents. Thomas was a handful. He crawled early and walked early and got into everything. He loved the farm, especially the animals. By the time he was 2, he was following Daniel around like a little shadow, trying to help with the chores. Luna was quieter, but just as determined. She loved books and puzzles and asking questions. Her vocabulary grew faster than anyone expected. She would sit on the porch for hours, watching the clouds and making up stories about them. The people of Hope's Landing adored the children. Mayor Stone became their unofficial grandmother, spoiling them with treats and gifts. The whole town watched them grow with pride and joy. These children represented something important. They were proof that two different worlds could come together and create something beautiful. Years passed. The farm grew. Daniel and Vera added rooms to the farmhouse. They bought more land. They hired workers to help with the harvest. But some things stayed the same. Every evening, they still sat on the porch and watched the sunset. Every night, they still put the children to bed with stories and songs. One evening, when Thomas was 5 and Luna was 5, Daniel took them down to the pond for the first time. They sat on the rock, the four of them together, and watched the fireflies light up the darkness. "This is where your mother and I fell in love," Daniel told them. "Really?" Luna asked, her eyes wide. "Really. We used to sit here and talk about the future. About you two." Thomas was more interested in catching fireflies. He ran around the edge of the pond, laughing as the lights blinked around him. But Luna stayed close to her parents, looking at the stars reflected in the water. "Mama," she said, "are you happy?" Vera looked at her daughter. She looked at Thomas, now chasing Biscuit the third around the yard. She looked at Daniel, the man who had saved her in every way that mattered. "Yes, my darling," she said. "I am the happiest I have ever been." Daniel put his arm around her, and Vera leaned into his warmth. They watched their children play under the stars, on a small farm on a frontier world, at the edge of known space. They had built something beautiful, something that would last on, and that was more than enough.